Well, in the last class, I gave a brief introduction, I gave a brief overview of the hypothesis and hypothesis testing. Right? Let's take this topic at large. First of all, I would like to clear the conceptual framework that I have discussed in the last class, that what is hypothesis and what is hypothesis testing. What is hypothesis and why this hypothesis is formulated, right? First of all, we must be aware of the basic meaning of the hypothesis. The basic meaning of hypothesis is, it is an assumption, it is an assumption about a population. I would clear the meaning of assumption later on, or it is a claim. Claim about a population or about certain relationship, about certain relationship of two variables. Right? Say for example, a manager claims that there is a strong relationship between the expenses in the advertisement and the volume of sales. Since it is the claim of the manager, of the marketing manager, he has to prove, he has to testify this claim, right? And that is why this claim is called a hypothesis, something which is not yet proved, right? Or it is a proposition. The managers of the companies in the corporate, the manager of the companies propose and test new things all the time. Always they are involved in proposing something and testing whether this proposal is viable, whether this proposal is justified or not, right? So I will take an example, a simple example. See, for example, a manager proposes, if we drop the price of the LCD TV by 1500, by rupees 1500, a manager of an LCD TV company proposes that if we drop the price of the certain model of LCD TV by rupees 1500, we will sell 40,000 LCD TV this year. What is this? This is just a proposition. This is not a factual data. This is just a proposition. This is just a hypothesis. Right? Most of the time, a manager's hypothesis is based on certain intuition. The hypothesis of a manager is based on intuition. Is based on intuition. Intuition. What is the meaning of intuition? He just listens the voice of some inner conscience. Meaning that he just thinks that if we will change the price of the particular product, we will be in a better position to sell that product more. Right? This is called the intuition. Since it is the product of his own mind, it is the product of his own, a manager's own mind. The manager, the onus is to the manager. The manager has to prove, the manager has to test that intuition. What is this intuition? You can say this intuition is a kind of hypothesis, is a kind of proposition, is a kind of claim. So hypothesis may be true or may not be true. Hypothesis may be true or false, may be true or may not be true. If the hypothesis will not be true, it means it will be false. How a manager tests the hypothesis, how a manager tests the claim that he made, how a manager tests the intuition that he made. This is called the hypothesis testing. The managers has to testify the assumptions, the claim, the propositions, the intuitions, and if the claim is for a particular kind of product. Say for example, and the product is being manufactured in a large volume daily or weekly, then how can a manager make a claim on that large volume of the product, or how a manager can assume something about that large volume of product? Say for example, if the product is being produced at the rate of 10,000 per day, 10,000 pieces per day, then how can a manager assume something, or how can a manager claim something about the volume of the product, about the whole product? For the sake of convenience, what the researcher or the managers do, they just take out a sample out of that volume of the product, and that volume of product is called population. He take out the sample out of that population and test the hypothesis on the basis of the information obtained from that sample. Right? The manager cannot obtain the information on the basis of taking the information from the whole product, since the volume of the product is 10,000 daily. So it is not possible for a manager to check every piece, check each piece. That will take much time. So for the sake of convenience, the managers take out the sample and check the claim and test the assumption that he made about the population. So there are two things: population if a researcher makes certain assumption, makes certain claim about the population, he has to prove that claim. So in order to prove that claim, he has to take out a small sample out of that population and test that claim, test that assumption on this sample. If he can prove that claim on this sample, he can say that the behavior of this sample is same as of the behavior of the population, meaning that he can generalize the behavior of the sample to the whole population. Got it? Just take a few examples of hypothesis. A pharma company claims a new drug is more effective than the existing drugs based on sample data. The university management assumes that a university is a place where n number of students get education. 10,000, 15,000, 20,000 students get education in the university. So it is not possible to research on each and every student. So first, the management of the university assumes that the proportion of smokers in the university is 0.42. 0.42 means 42%. 42%. Now the management has to prove this claim with the help of taking out a sample out of that population. The population is the student of the university, right? A company claims that LED bulb manufacturing company, LED bulb manufacturing company claims that the mean life of its LED bulb is 1600 hours. Mean life of its LED bulb is 1600 hours. An LED bulb is mean life of the LED bulb is 1600 hours. Right? So After we assume something about the population or we claim something about the population, we have to test the assumption or the claim about the population by taking sample that I told you, by taking sample out of the population, right? This is called hypothesis testing. When you test your claim on the sample of the population, this is called hypothesis testing. Now, the claim or the assumption that we wish to test is called the claim or assumption that we wish to test is called null hypothesis. It is symbolized as H0 or H0. That we wish to test. And this is the hypothesis. This is the hypothesis which is tested for. This is the hypothesis which is tested for possible rejection. In fact, this is the hypothesis which is proposed with the intention of receiving a rejection. With the intention of receiving a rejection. Why this rejection? In order to accept what is desired to be proved. In order to accept what is desired to be proved. That will be more clear when I will give some example of some practical example of this. Now, rejection of the null hypothesis leads to the acceptance of some other hypothesis which is called alternative hypothesis. Alternative hypothesis. Alternative hypothesis. It is symbolized as HA or H1. So the rejection of null hypothesis indicates that what does it indicate? It indicates that the assumption or the claim about the population has some statistical significance, has some statistical importance. Let's look at the errors on the hypothesis testing. Since the hypothesis testing is applied on the sample data, so there is every possibility that there is an error in taking out the sample from the population or something else. Let's look at the errors, possible errors in hypothesis testing. Are you getting my point? So as a consequence of error in the sampling, as a result of error in the sampling, the inferences, the conclusions drawn from the sample could be wrong, because the sampling was not up to the mark. So what kind of errors we can encounter, we can come across while hypothesis testing? So let's have a look on this table. It will be more helpful for you to understand. Do not reject. True H naught, false H naught. What is H naught? Null hypothesis. So if the null hypothesis is true, it is bound to be accepted. If the null hypothesis is true, it is bound to be accepted, means it cannot be rejected. Do not reject means accept. Some okay. And if the null hypothesis is false, it is bound to be rejected. If you are rejecting the true null hypothesis, you are not accepting the true null hypothesis, you are rejecting the true null hypothesis, you are making type 1 error. Type 1 error. And if the null hypothesis is false, you do not have to reject this null hypothesis. That is, you have to reject that null hypothesis. You have to reject the false null hypothesis, and by mistake, if you accept the false null hypothesis, this is called type 2 error. On the contrary, if true null hypothesis is accepted, it is the correct decision. If the false null hypothesis is rejected, it is again a correct decision. Correct decision. Right? I want to tell one more point, very important point, that any variable related to the population is called the parameters, right? Related to the population is called parameters. Say for example, mean of the population or variance of the population, and anything which is related to the sample, the variable which is related to the sample is called the statistics. Statistics. Mean of the sample, it is denoted as x bar, and small s, which is denoted by the standard deviation. Mean of the sample. This is mean of the population, right? So there are various techniques used in the testing the hypothesis. It depends on whether the sample drawn from the population is large or small. If the sample is large, the test that will be applied is called z-test, and the test which are applied for hypothesis testing called test statistics. Z-test for large samples. Large sample means sample size greater than 30. N is the sample size. And t-test for small samples. That refers to the sample size less than 30. So let's take the first technique that is called z-test or z-statistics. The formula used for this statistics is x bar minus mu upon small sigma upon under root n. Yes, small sigma upon under root n. X, as you know that x bar is the sample mean sample. Yes, sample mean. Mu is the population mean. Which population? From which the sample is drawn. This is the standard deviation of the population. If the standard deviation of the population is not given, you can use S. S is the standard deviation of the sample, and N is the sample size. Right? Write down a very simple example. Just write down the example. A sample of 200 LED bulbs a sample of 200 LED bulbs made by a company give a lifetime mean of 1540 hours. With a standard deviation of 42 hours. Test the claim of the manufacturer that the mean life of LED bulbs is 1500 hours. Full stop. Take level of significance alpha is equal to 5%. Alpha is equal to 5%. Alpha is nothing but the type 1 error, rejecting the true null hypothesis. What actually this question says? This question says that a sample of 200 bulbs is drawn from a population of some LED bulbs, and the mean life of that 200 LED bulbs is found to be 1540 hours with a certain standard deviation. So the manufacturer claims that the average life, the mean life of my company's LED bulb is 1500 hours. Test this claim. Test the hypothesis. Alpha is the level of significance. So first of all, you have to formulate the hypotheses. Null hypothesis says that mean life of the bulbs is 1500 hours, and the alternative hypothesis is just opposite of this. It says that it is not 1500 hours. It is not 1500 hours. 1500 hours.